Well, good morning, everyone. This is the first time that I've really come to give a speech that I had music playing, so that was really a nice introduction. Jeff, thank you for the introduction also. First, I want to say how great it is to be here in San Antonio with everyone in this room that is involved with this conference. And I don't know about you all, but I just love San Antonio. I mean, the Riverwalk, the people are nice, and they're really great hosts, and it's a wise decision to have this function here. Also, General Clapper, thank you for your comments. They had me backstage, so I couldn't hear everything that you said, but I'm sure it was done well. And I do want to acknowledge General Clapper. He's a tremendous leader, a great American. We work on a lot of issues together. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you have the position that you do have. I'm from Maryland, the 2nd Congressional District, mostly the Baltimore area. I am now serving my second term as chairman of the Technical Tactical Committee, known as TNT, on the House Select Intelligence Committee. And we do all of the oversight of satellites, SIGINT, military intelligence. I'm also proud to say that I'm the first member of the Intelligence Committee to actually be able to represent NSA because it is in my district. First time they've ever been able to talk to anybody that actually represented them. I also sit on the Appropriations Committee, and I serve on the Commerce, Justice, and Science Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. And I tackle issues every day concerning satellites, SIGINT, and other important infrastructure. And this is really what we do in the House Select Intelligence Committee on the TNT Committee. Now, first, I want to acknowledge each and every one of you here today. You do so much in the geospatial intelligence community that keeps our country safe. And you're special people, you're smart, you know what you're doing. And I think it's really great that you can come to this conference once a year and talk about what you do and develop relationships and trust and whatever, because it will make us stronger when we go back to what we do every day. I want to thank you for what you do in the area of designing the systems to analyze the images to those that build the equipment and to those that launch the equipment. And it's just a very important function. America is the strongest country in the world because we have a unique partnership between the business sector and government. America is also the most powerful country in the world because, in part, we dominate the skies. More than 50 years ago, the Soviet Union rocked our world by launching Sputnik into space. The United States responded with a swift investment in space technology and a reinvigoration spirit of innovation and unprecedented emphasis on science, research, and education. In less than 12 years, those efforts culminated with a man landing on the moon, a robust American space infrastructure, and every kid on Earth, especially the USA, wanting to be a Neil Armstrong. Being an astronaut was as cool as being an NFL football player, and national morale then was at an all-time high. Now, unfortunately, America right now is in some danger of losing preeminence in space. One example is our launch industry. Our launch industry is highly strained to meet our needs, whereas other countries like France are moving ahead. A once robust partnership between the U.S. government and the American space industry has been weakened by years of demanding space programs, the complexity of technology, and an inattention to acquisition discipline. We're facing a challenge left by a decade of failed acquisitions that has left potential holes in our satellite system known as overhead architecture. This could leave us without the ability to secure the intelligence we need to prepare for the potential attacks or track suspected terrorists around the world. Now we have the potential to fall behind on systems that provide services like global positioning, weather monitoring, and missile warning. The consequence of any satellite system that is less than robust are potentially catastrophic. Satellites keep us safe. We use satellites for reconnaissance and to support our combat forces. We use them to map the front lines, find where al-Qaeda is hiding, and to communicate with our troops. The Department of Defense, Homeland Security, State Department are all major consumers of satellite imagery. Together with my colleagues on the Intelligence Committee, we spent most of last year investigating to find out how the flaws in our space program happen and how we can create a roadmap to move forward. We knew this situation called for serious and swift action. Our subcommittee, the Technical Tactical Committee, convened a series of roundtable hearings with staff from the National Reconnaissance Office, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, and commercial satellite companies. We put together a comprehensive report that is now in the hands of President Obama's administration. Here is what we found. 1, America needs to reform current export regulations that hinder the space industry, specifically the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, or ITAR, and I will get back to that in a minute. 2, funding for research and development must be increased and happen before manufacturing starts. 3, commercial imagery must be considered under certain circumstances to utilize the latest in technology while keeping our costs down. 4, America needs a comprehensive plan or a roadmap for overhead architecture, including imagery, signals, and communications. 5, we need to reinvigorate science and technology education to rebuild our space workforce. Now back to ITAR. While it had good intentions, ITAR is severely hurting the industry. As we all know, ITAR was intended to protect sensitive technologies and information from being transferred to nations that are potentially a security risk. But over time, the policies under ITAR meant to protect us and make us stronger are having the opposite effect. We are actually hampering national security as key vendors in the technology sector are going out of business because they can't export, while foreign competitors fill in the gaps. ITAR is providing the motivation for European countries to simply copy the technology we created and perfected. Their companies are getting stronger, and ours are getting weaker. The ITAR process is cumbersome. It is time-consuming. It is expensive. Ultimately, we don't have justification for why components are on the list of banned exports for American companies. When foreign companies sell the same components freely using the technology we created, and they simply copied it. Now, 20 years ago, American companies controlled more than 70% of the commercial satellite industry. But because of ITAR, that number has now dropped to about 27%. And I'm pleased to report that we are making steady progress in this issue. Language in the Intelligence Authorization Act for 2010 was approved by the House Intelligence Committee in June. It required the Director of National Intelligence to review the ITAR regulations and determine what satellites and components could safely be taken off the list subject to regulations. I also work closely with House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Howard Berman from California, a great partner in ITAR reform, to get similar provisions inserted in both the Foreign Relations and Defense Authorization Acts for 2010. Both bills passed the House of Representatives in June, and we're now lobbying the Senate to pass ITAR, but we need your help. So if you have any of your senators or any relationships, make sure that they know what we're talking about with ITAR. The Senate right now is not sure whether they're going to put this in their foreign relations bill. We're working with them. We need to do this. It's so important to our country that we do. And so if you can help, and I've talked to a lot of people in this room about helping us with the Senate. Okay, now for the second finding in our report, research and development. As I alluded to earlier, we found in our report, in our investigation, that a lot of these problems were largely due to unproven technologies within the acquisition process. We are entering into acquisition with premature technologies. We're putting the cart before the horse. By the time a project gets to manufacturing stage, everything should be an exact science. We need to invest a lot more in pre-manufacturing, in research and development. Some companies that participated in our roundtable discussions said only 3 to 4% of the overall project budget is getting spent on research and development. They suggested that as a goal, 10% should be devoted to it. A more practical goal may be 8%. I understand that it is a challenge to fund space R&D while the country is recovering from past space failures and also fighting 2 wars. But the purpose of R&D is to show a path to the future and to allow mistakes to be made prior to entering pre-acquisition or development. It is too costly to encourage mistakes to be made once a program has been committed to moving into development. Frankly, I'm concerned that we are continuing to go down the path of not conducting enough R&D with existing contracts. If this happens, we are doomed for more projects that are over budget and overdue. Now let's get to commercial. We also have to take a closer look at commercial when appropriate. The government can avoid buying large and expensive satellites by purchasing the photos rather than the camera. We use this approach in everyday life. I have to wear a suit to work every day, and my dry cleaning bills add up, especially in this economy. But never would I consider actually purchasing a full-scale dry cleaning system. It just doesn't always make practical sense. It's too expensive. Likewise, with space, we can simply contract for the services needed, usually at a greatly reduced price that will allow us to funnel savings to other programs. Our European allies are doing this well. The British Paradigm program is pursuing a commercial approach to providing protected, secure communications for their military. They signed a contract back in 2003, and in May 2007, they launched the first of their Skynet 5 telecommunications satellites to boost communication for troops deployed in Afghanistan. The services contract, in which the private company owns and operates the systems, calls for 3 or 4 identical models. They didn't have the money we have, so they implemented this approach, and it is working well. The mistakes of the past prove that we shouldn't put all of our eggs in the government satellite basket, so to speak. We must take a balanced approach with a comprehensive roadmap. Now, about the roadmap. Other than the President's current recommendation, there's no comprehensive space architecture or strategic plan that accommodates current and future national security priorities or DoD and the intelligence community capability requirements. This should include imagery, signals, and communication. We also need to clearly determine who has decision-making and funding authority, especially for joint-funded satellite programs, so that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Defense are working together. Now, I'm in a unique position as TNT Chairman and also a member of the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee, which oversees the funding of NASA and NOAA budgets. I see every day that there is just not enough money to go around, and we need a lot more collaboration between agencies like DoD, Intelligence, and NASA to prevent redundancy. It will help us save money and, again, apply it to other areas of the space program. For example, if NASA is looking at building a new launch, then it can be shared with DoD and Intelligence. And here's yet another example of where commercial might be able to do it cheaper for the same product. If they can, why not at least consider it? Let's look at it, let's investigate it. My committee is working closely with the President Obama administration, the D&I Director Blair, and General Clapper on a plan. Without getting into specifics, for the first time, I see a roadmap for the future being developed. This is very positive. Much of the leadership, who I respect, but have been resistant to commercial in the past, are now at least considering it. I applaud that, and I'm excited to see this recommendation in our report coming closer to realization. I will say that I advocate always having a backup plan. I see so many projects taking a huge leap in faith. Here's how I see it. If Tarzan is swinging on a vine in the jungle, he won't let go of the vine in one hand until he has the other vine in the other hand. Otherwise, he crashes to the ground. We can't afford that anymore. We have to take a scientific approach and have a balance in our programs. Now I want to get into space education. I'm worried that American students are slipping behind our international counterparts in math and science education. Recent trends show that too few students are choosing to pursue science, technology, engineering, and math degrees, and that also includes rocket science. In many technical fields, more than half the degrees are awarded to students who are in the United States on temporary visas, according to the National Science Foundation. China, with about 4 times as many people as the United States, produces nearly 7 times as many engineers. In the most recent comparisons, China graduated more than 440,000 degrees in engineering compared to 65,000 in the United States. Programs take too long, and trips back and forth to space station no longer capture the public's interest. We need to rekindle the patriotism we felt when Neil Armstrong placed that flag on the moon. Americans have fallen out of love with space. Maybe another project will help, like a trip to the moon, a trip to Mars. Any way we do it, we have to get young people excited about science, technology, engineering, math, and space. China, a communist country, can basically order their top students to go into these fields. And they do force them, where they do encourage them very strongly to go in the fields of space. I know we have some friends here from other countries, so we want to be good hosts. Commercializing space in certain circumstances unleashes the creative energy of the free market. It promotes innovation and will keep the United States competitive in the global space marketplace. Commercialization equals innovation. Innovation equals excitement. Excitement equals inspired students. I'm working hard to make sure we have sufficient funds directed towards science education programs. But the government can't do it alone, especially in this area. We need the help of our business partners. I believe by creating a robust space industry now, or even coming up with a new high-profile program, we can get young Americans to choose a career in space later. Now, in these remarks, I have addressed both the positive and the negative of our space program. I've talked about our successes and our failures, and we've had them both. We must learn from our successes and our failures. We need to learn from them so we can create a stronger space program. Congress is taking on some difficult issues, like health care. But in our field, we have to keep our eye on the ball. And I know we can find the time and energy to get this done. National security is not a Democratic or Republican issue, and we need to all come together to set aside our partisan differences and reprioritize in space. Now, I look forward to working with all of you, our private sector partners, in maintaining our space dominance. I'd like to thank you all for your innovation, ingenuity, dedication to your industry. It's been a true privilege to be invited to speak to you all today, and thanks again for having me here in this great San Antonio, Texas. Now, I'm happy to take some questions. And by the way, remember, I'm not a General Clapper, so I'm not as technical as he is. And I'll probably tell you that you might know more about the answer to the question than I will, but I'll try to do the best I can. Okay. All right, leave that in.
Very helpful. Thank you for engaging with the audience. The questions at usgif.org is working. It's actually a nice system. I get it typed out. There's a box that corrects your spelling because the questions that look like this, I'm going to speak to your mother.
Is this a test?
It is not.
Okay.
We're a long way from Washington, and people read the newspaper and become cynical that you can't read everything in the newspaper to understand what really happens. Not without a civics lesson, can you help us to understand sort of the basic balance between the role of the authorizers and the role of the appropriators? Because you're one of each.
Sure. I think very simply that the authorizing committees, like the House Select Intelligence Committee, are the committees that specialize in whatever they do. We specialize in intelligence by overseeing all of the intelligence agencies, CIA, NSA, NRO, NGA, better say NGA here, NGA, and on, Department of Energy, CIA, whatever. The appropriators are the ones that have the money. they're the ones that really have the final say. And as both an authorizer and an appropriator, I can tell you that the appropriators really look at what the authorizing committee is doing. And in most circumstances, not all, they try to follow the recommendations in the budget, say that our intelligence committee will recommend. But sometimes the intelligence committee can't get a bill passed. We had an issue a couple years ago where some of the individuals on my committee made the issue of torture an issue. And by the way, I don't believe in torture. All the experts say that torture doesn't work. But bottom line, we have other issues we have to deal with, like technical tactical that we're talking about here today. So what happened, the committee, the actual budget and the wording that came out was more about torture, and President Bush didn't like that, so he didn't sign the bill, the authorizer's bill. Now, we have to keep moving ahead, and it's the role of an appropriator to keep the government going and funded. So then the appropriators step in. The good news is that we work very closely, the authorizing committee, with the appropriators. I work very closely with Congressman Norm Dix from Washington State. He was on the Intelligence Committee. He's vice chair of the committee, the Defense Committee on Appropriations. He's second to Murtha. And Norm Dix and I work very closely on a lot of the issues that I discussed today.
Thank you. I'll stay on the congressional theme since we have such a member. The 9/11 Commission recommended fundamental reform of congressional oversight of the intelligence community. Has that happened? Do we think we need to do more to optimize the impact of the nation's investment in intelligence?
I think we find when there are problems that occur is that when we don't use the process. Our forefathers created a great system of government of checks and balances. Now, when the administration might try to go too far or doesn't involve Congress, whose job it is to budget and to oversee, usually that's when we have problems. The purpose is to make sure that we have one product, in the end, and that's basically what we do.
Good. A lot of excitement in the audience with your remarks on research and development. This is clearly a group that uses the resources to spawn innovation, and the innovation spawns capability. Given that we have two wars going on and given to the budget situation, how do I balance the need of operations with the ability to look to the necessary capabilities of the future and invest in the future?
Well, first thing, you look at your past, and you look at two major programs that I'm not going to discuss because I'm sure they're classified, that have been major failures in our country, and we can't afford to have any more failures. One of the things that our tabletops or our roundtables brought out in the last year, and is in our report, is the fact that we didn't spend enough money for research and development. So what happens, a major company, I'm sure many of you well represented here today, will get a contract, and you'll do the research and development along the way. And that's why a lot of times we have failures or that we're over budget, or because the program managers are not doing what they need to do and being strong. When you have a 3-star or somebody like General Clapper coming to you and say, I want this on that bird, it's hard to turn them down. So we have to have discipline in that arena. Acquisition also. One of our major failures was because we didn't have the experience in the acquisition area. And we need to make sure that we have the people that are putting together the contract, the specifications. They know what they're doing, and then our program managers have to make sure that we follow through with the process. You always need the checks and balances and the accountability issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The focus on students.
Okay, that's a big issue.
Clearly an interest for this industry, who hires a large percentage, I'll say, of the eligible science engineering, the rocket scientists going forward. Looking back to your day, all politics are local, but looking back to your days where you were on the local front, what have you seen differently about how do we grow our kids in the local schools, and how do we apply them resources, and how do we motivate them? I mean, you have a perspective now where you can look back to when you did regional, and now you're doing national.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, but the issue really, education is the most important thing that we can do. You're all in this room here today because you're smart, you know what you're doing, and you had an education. And, we have a lot of competition in this world. China, Russia, all our European allies, and we need to continue to not only focus on education, but make sure that those individuals, those children who really have the aptitude for math and science, that we identify them in an early age. I'll give you an example. China starts in middle school. We need to start in middle school. I've come up with a plan that I've been working with both the industry and also with a lot of some of the commercial contractors about maybe having a pilot program right on the campus of maybe NSA, where, by the way, Goddard NASA is right up the street, identifying students in the inner city, in the suburbs, wherever, who can be tested and have an aptitude for math, science, and engineering. Get them at an early age on the campus, get them involved, get the culture into these children, and then they will grow, and then they're having internships as they go forward. Use this as a pilot program. Have some of your best teachers throughout the United States, people who are retired and still want to be involved, and educate these children. And then if it works, then go to take this to another level. There are STEM schools throughout the country, but we need to do a better job. And I also mentioned in the speech that those of us who were around when I was born, and then we saw what occurred when we went to the moon, everybody was excited. I mean, the patriotism was great. I don't think everyone in the country was looking at TV when we put the man on the moon. Now, our NFL football players, basketball players are stars. Our astronauts aren't anymore. This is sad. We have to reinvigorate, and that's why I think we need to really have a program that excites our country. I mean, going back and forth to the space station just isn't exciting our country anymore.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your committee has focused on ITAR, making sure that the U.S. is competitive internationally. You focused on making sure that commercial has sort of the right place going forward. Your remarks talked to service solutions. Given the unique needs of the warfighter, how does Agile 80% solutions square with needing more technical maturity before acquisition?
I don't know what Agile 80% is, so tell me.
So the commercials come and say, I got to get to the market quick, and I'm going to make it 80% good.
Okay.
And the acquisition community says, we're not going to transition into operations till it's absolutely perfect.
Because of that, really a lot of that has to do at the top, setting the standards and moving issues forward. Whenever you have a project, you need to bring the team together. It starts at the top. You need to set the standards. And a lot of times, politics gets involved, egos get involved, whatever. If you set up a good system and good standards and have good leadership enforcing it, that shouldn't happen.
The roundtables that you've had with the government and industry, have they moved us closer, do you think, to get an acquisition plan forward, an architecture for the future? I think your committee has been probably the loudest voice from the Hill saying it's important to establish a roadmap so we know which road we're on.
Well, let me tell you how it started. When I became chairman of the Technical Tactical Committee, I saw that the way we have our hearings, whether it's in our SCIF or whether it's in public, you have 5 minutes to ask a question. Now, you tell me how something as sophisticated, as technical as what we do here, you can ask a question and get an answer and make a difference in 5 minutes. So what I decided to do was to have round-top tabletops where we would bring in and we had a partnership to do this with the DNI. And we would bring in the major contractors, some of the major commercial contractors, bring them in our SCIF without a reporter, and telling them we were going to do a report, because if you don't have a report, you might as well not have the hearing, and make it unclassified. And it was difficult at first. Some of the companies were reluctant because they were used, I think, to Congress saying, we're going to get you, we're going to find something wrong. And that was not our goal. Our goal was to work together as a team to bring things together, but you have to learn from the mistakes and the successes. And some of the companies wouldn't come. I had to personally say, I'm going to take this personal if you don't come. And I know I'll be chair for at least another year and a half, but they all came. And that was good. And what happened, it was tremendous, because every company that came in came to the same conclusion. They said, when we first started in the space program, we would work through Christmas. We were excited. We were doing whatever we needed to do. And now that excitement doesn't seem to be there. This is more space than anything. And as a result of coming together, we talked about the Sputnik issue, how we responded in 12 years, and how we can't get a major satellite up in 12 years. So in certain situations, very rare, but that happens. So if that's the case, what can we do? And I think some of the things I talked about in the speech, the research and development before manufacturing. I'm not an engineer, but one of the things that I do see is that if you do your research and development and testing, there shouldn't be many problems when it comes to manufacturing. That should be the part that we should go quickly, on time, and on budget. And that has not happened in our space program. But the good news, as a result of this, and there are other individuals out there who've been doing investigations, is that we now have a situation that I feel very good about where we're going in our country. I think that the Director of Intelligence, or the DNI, I think the SecDef and with General Clapper are all coming together. They're doing things that they used to do that are traditional, but they're opening up. They're looking at the possibility in certain situations of using commercial. And I feel for the first time in my role that we finally have a roadmap on where we're going. I like Admiral Blair. I think he's the right person, because the purpose of the DNI is to coordinate and connect and bring everybody together, hold them accountable, bring them together. And I do think it's very important that the DNI and the SecDef communicate, because sometimes there could be some differences between the mission of DoD, intelligence, and then you have NSA or NASA. So this coordination is extremely important for the future of our industry and our national security.
A final question. You've talked a lot about the need for skilled professionals, rocket scientists, science, math, acquisition professionals. You spoke to the partnership between government and industry.
Very important.
Lots of legislation from the Hill that is questioning how do we get organizational conflict of interest right. If we're short of experts and in the government and industry, how do we get the right team on the field? Is there a balance here that we can work? Are we pushing experts out because of organizational conflict of interest, or have we crossed some line that we have to go rewind the tape to?
Well, for starters, let me answer this with Congress. Yeah. I mean, our ethical standards have become so complicated that it seems you need a lawyer to interpret them, and that's wrong. The ethical standards should be basic. That we know what's right and wrong. We need to set the standards. We need to get through the bureaucracy, the egos, and we have to be willing to take a chance as long as it's well-founded. So I think that we can work through that. It just takes the right leadership to understand. One of the most important things that we do is, and yet in intelligence there's a lot we can't talk about, but it's letting the public know that what we're doing when there could be a conflict. And if we have these worked out and people know the standards, what's right and what's wrong, then I think we can work through that. But to me, that's an issue that we can resolve easily. I'm more worried about the end game, making sure we have the right standards, making sure we have the right research and development, the right people, the younger generation trained to where we need to go.
We appreciate your
thank you for having me here.
We appreciate your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jeff. See you.